Today, we'll be talking all about carbon footprint. Really, what is carbon footprint and what are some things that you could do about it? Slide. Okay, so first and foremost, I am Mark Allen, Global Product Manager here at FloraLife, and I also lead our sustainability initiatives. And today, we have a special guest, Dan Hill-Morris from Carbon Footprint Ltd. Dan and team helped us learn all about carbon footprint when we started this journey and some things that we could start to do to start improving upon our carbon footprint. And Dan today will be helping educate on all things to do with carbon footprint. Okay. So before we get into that, I'd like to first explain how we got here. A few years back now, we realized there were a lot of things we didn't know when trying to become more sustainable. We would always focus on projects to do better, whether that's social or environmental, but without a real understanding of what we were really trying to achieve with those projects. What was the bigger picture we were trying to improve upon. So we actually ended up going back to school. We got some education on sustainability in general, and we realized that we actually needed a plan. Where did we want to end up? But more importantly, how were we going to get ourselves from where we were now to where we wanted to be? And this led to the FloraLife 2025 Sustainability Plan. And without going into too much detail, this is basically our 5 focus areas or 5 commitments, you can see there on the screen, of goals that we want to achieve over the next 4 years. And if you'd like to learn more about that plan, then you can find out more at oasisfloralife.com/sustainability. And Georgina, maybe you also want to share that link in the chat. Okay. So today we're going to focus on our climate change commitment. How are we at FloraLife going to reduce our carbon footprint and minimize our impact on climate change? Or maybe I should say minimize our impact on global warming. So working with Carbon Footprint Ltd, we started to do a deep dive on one of our most popular product ranges that we sell globally. And that is the FloraLife Express 200 range. So the Express 200 range, if you don't know, is a product specifically designed for the storage and transport part of the supply chain. For example, it could be used in bucket solutions, bouquet operations, or in wholesalers or even florists. And basically, it provides that optimum level of nutrition for flowers at that specific stage of the supply chain. And not only that, it also has the Express no-cut technology, which adds a whole load of other benefits to your business. But we won't get into too much detail about that today. There's plenty of other webinars where we talk about Express. But if you do have questions on the product, feel free to leave them in the comments or the chat, and we'll get to them towards the end. So for the Express 200 range, we mapped out the product's carbon footprint across all different container sizes that we manufacture globally. And this assessment allowed us to focus on areas of improvement for the product. One thing we immediately started to do was transition customers towards the more concentrated version of the product. And because more concentration means less packaging, less freight required, but ultimately the same high quality use solution at the end of the day. It's very similar to those dishwasher liquids that dish liquid soap that you use, though they're getting more and more concentrated in the supermarkets all the time. And you actually end up getting more out of less just because they're becoming more concentrated. And that's exactly what we focused on here. Of course, there were some parts, though, of the product's carbon footprint that were not easy to immediately reduce. And for this, we actually decided to offset the rest through carbon offsetting projects. One of those projects was planting trees in Kenya, and another was assisting in reducing the deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. And I won't go into too much detail here, as Dan will certainly be explaining more further on. So if you don't already purchase Express Clear Ultra 200, or if you just purchased the regular version, then you may want to give it a look. This product is fully carbon neutral, and because of its increased concentration, is actually probably better for you financially also. Okay, so I think that's enough about FloraLife. Dan will be taking it from here to really explain why monitoring your carbon footprint is important, and maybe some things you could be thinking about doing in your own business as a retail business. Okay, so Dan, please take it away.
Thank you, Mark. And hello to everybody. I'd say good afternoon or good morning, but you're all in different parts of the world, so that could be anything, couldn't it? Happy Wednesday to everybody. There we go. Today we're going to just touch a little bit on carbon from the context of climate change. What's it all about? Why is it so important? And off the back of that, what is carbon offsetting, and then how have we worked together with FloraLife here on the Express 200 specifically at this time, but also intend to work with them further on other lines and so on, to develop that sustainability piece between now and 2025 as well. But before I dive into all of that, I thought I'd just give everybody a bit of a brief introduction to our business, Carbon Footprint Ltd. We've been very, very happy to partner with FloraLife on this project and to be continuing to work with them, as I say, to help support their sustainability goals. We've been in this line for around 18 years now. Yeah, more than 15 years, nearly 18 years now, gosh. And the core business that we work with here is as a low carbon consultancy. So we support all sorts of organizations of all shapes and sizes in understanding their carbon footprint. What is that? Where are those emissions coming from? And what can they do about it? We've worked with all sorts of organizations, as I say, of all shapes and sizes, including the BBC, UK government, local authorities in other countries as well, various educational institutions. On the carbon offsetting side of what we do, we work with more than 100 different carbon offsetting projects around the world. And again, we will touch on that in a little bit more detail shortly and focus in particular on the projects that have been chosen by the guys here at FloraLife as well to support. And we have all sorts of self-service tools even. So on our website, if you were to choose to go and have a look at that, you'd also find for individuals and for small businesses, if you really want to make a difference after you hear everything that we've got to say here today, you can do things like calculate your own carbon footprint. Our carbon footprint calculator is the most used carbon calculator on the internet. It's a nice feather to have in our cap. But certainly, whether you're just talking about your family at home or a small business or similar, there's a lot of tools and information there that's accessible to you to be able to make a difference yourself in addressing climate change. So that's probably enough about us, other than to say, of course, we carry a number of accreditations. We've got the ISO 14001 and 9001 there. We're approved by the QAS, the Quality Assurance Standard, who were originally set up by the UK government to monitor organisations who operate in the space of carbon offsetting. And we'll touch on that again in a little bit as well. But essentially, I think the important part of this relationship and our partnership with FloraLife is the independent verification and validation of all of the good work that they're doing. So carrying that credible independent label to certify the carbon neutral product that Mark just touched on with the Express Ultra 200, in fact the Express 200 range, then is really, really great. So just onto the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about what climate change is and why is it so important to be acting immediately. So I'm sure everybody is hearing more and more and more in the media and the press these days about addressing climate change, the climate change emergencies, the climate crisis, and what all of the various governments and local authorities and businesses are doing. It seems that it has never been more fashionable to be setting targets to net zero by 2030, by 2050, by. And we're very, very pleased with this. Of course, it's all very good news that it's right up everybody's agenda, because for a very long time, this problem, this issue has been gradually increasing over time from way back when. Many generations, years ago, we of course started polluting the atmosphere not knowing at that time what damage we were doing, and the damage has been measured and understood in increasing amounts over the last years, 10, 20 years maybe. When you think about initially those people who might have started to clamp down on CFC gases in aerosol cans, or switching from 4-star petrol to unleaded petrol, and all of the little baby steps that we were taking all those years ago, now coming round to electric vehicles and renewable energy options, and all of the big ticket items that we can do today to support this. Climate change is essentially caused because we are increasing the levels of carbon in our atmosphere. All of the gases that cause the greenhouse gases, carbon equivalency gases that are caused by burning fossil fuels or similar, are getting trapped in our atmosphere, and as a result, this layer of carbon essentially traps the sun's energy within the boundaries of the Earth's atmosphere. So energy that is supposed to essentially bounce off of the planet's surface and then back into space, or radiate into space as heat and light energy, is getting caught and is heating the planet from the surface. Whereas previously, of course, the heat from the sun is much more of a temporary thing. It's sticking around. This is what's causing the problem. And you can see here, just as the image represents the last image there, the blue and red one, over the last couple of 100 years, that is, so a slow change, but a change nonetheless. The core temperature of the planet is increasing, and actually what we're going to see at an increase in temperature of 1.5 degrees, just 1.5 degrees increase, will see significant changes. The melting of the polar ice caps changes, irrevocable changes to our coastlines and our sea levels, seeing some areas completely flooded and submerged, some areas just radically changed forevermore. And there are a number of things that we can do now, today, to avoid that, because that 1.5 degree temperature rise, that point of no return, according to the latest calculations, could occur anywhere between 2027 and 2042. So the worst case scenario is that is only 6 years away. Acting to address climate change now, today, really, really helps to slow that down, and ultimately, we hope, of course, prevent it altogether. But slowing it down is goal one, and that's what we've got to do. So that's what we're here to talk about today, the work that FloraLife have done and are continuing to do, the benefits of choosing products like the Express 200 range that are carbon neutral, how this can be something that you do in the rest of your businesses as well, and your everyday life in helping to address climate change. Shall we move on to the next slide there, Mark? So the carbon journey, of course, as a business, from a business point of view, or possibly even as an individual, is a very linear piece of work. The first thing you want to do is calculate your carbon emissions, calculate your carbon footprint, how much pollution is going into the atmosphere, how much tons or kilograms of carbon dioxide or equivalent are being caused by your activities. And to measure that is always step one, because we can't do anything about it if we don't know what the number is. As I've touched on, there are lots and lots of ways to do this. There are some self-service calculator tools on the website. We have worked in a very detailed fashion, very much a deep dive, detailed fashion with the FloraLife guys to understand the end-to-end, cradle-to-gate carbon footprint of the Express 200 range. So this is all of the activity involved in delivering that product to you as a customer. Whether that is about the raw materials, where they're sourced from, how they're transported, how they move from one place to the next, the storage and distribution of that product, the packaging, the labeling, the materials that are used in that product. Every aspect has been looked at and explored to understand the carbon footprint, multiplied up, of course, by the quantities of the product that are being distributed in order to understand the total total emissions. What is cradle to gate? That's a great question from Sharon. So the carbon footprint of a product can be measured in one of two ways. We refer to either cradle to gate or cradle to grave. So cradle to gate is essentially the production and distribution and delivery of the product, everything right up until the point that the product is in the customer's hands. Essentially, for a lot of businesses, it's very difficult to have any control over what happens to the product after it's in the customer's hand. For example, disposal, is it recycled or sent to landfill, etc. It's very difficult to control that as a manufacturing business or a production business. So typically, we would recommend the cradle to gate approach, because to gate means to that point of handover, to that point of demarcation, when it then becomes the customer's responsibility. Occasionally, some products are assessed on a cradle to grave basis, which takes into account their whole use and end of life. In particular, this might be true of food products, or some black goods electrical items if they're part of a circular economy or recycling scheme. I hope that answers the question. As individuals, of course, we should all be very, very mindful of how we handle our waste anyway. So hoping that when we do choose our carbon neutral products that have been assessed cradle to gate, we're then still going ahead and being very sensible about how we recycle the packaging and deal with that in a responsible fashion. So that's the calculation. After the calculation, of course, we look at setting targets and objectives and ways in which we can target and reduce those footprints. And Mark already touched on some of the things that we got under the skin of with the Express 200 product. In particular, we looked at some of the packaging, we looked at some of the distribution channels and the transport, and of course, in particular, the marketing drive towards the ultra variant of the product, which is driving customers towards choosing the ultra variant because all in all, it has a significantly less impact on climate change, significantly lower carbon footprint. And then, of course, offsetting. I won't dwell on offsetting here on this slide because we're going to talk about that next, and that's the big piece that we're going to talk about today. But beyond the offsetting and beyond using offsetting as a vehicle to become certified as carbon neutral, we also help with communication of that. So we've got the standard, the carbon footprint standard as a carbon neutral product, that, as I touched on before, independent mark, which demonstrates FloraLife's commitment to addressing climate change, and compliance as well. So increasingly, organizations like FloraLife, or perhaps even like yourselves, are going to be under increasing pressure, perhaps not today, but maybe tomorrow or next year. The legislation is just going to get more and more stringent around reporting on and reducing carbon emissions for all of the reasons that we've talked about. It's very, very important. So all of the work that we're doing here will be in line with that as well. Shall we step on to the next slide there, Mark? So what is carbon offsetting? Carbon offsetting is the ability to address climate change now, today. And I'll explain that in a bit more detail. We work with, as I said, dozens and dozens and dozens of different carbon offsetting projects all around the world. And these projects are set up in such a way that they are essentially proactively either removing carbon from the atmosphere, or they're preventing it from being caused in the first place. So absolutely, they're acting in a additionality, that they're either saving or removing carbon as we speak, literally all of the time. This is what they're doing. They generate, as a result of this, something we call carbon credits, and those carbon credits are traded for organizations, any organizations, to become certified as carbon neutral. Essentially, if you have a business or a product that you know has produced X amount of carbon. You can purchase carbon credits that are associated with the same amount of carbon that has been removed from the atmosphere, giving you a net zero result. This is where that language comes from when people talk about net zero. So the carbon positive, carbon negative come together to meet in the middle to make a net zero result and be certified as carbon neutral. Now, these projects could be in all sorts of shapes and sizes. So we have a number of renewable energy products that look at providing wind or solar power to parts of the world and removing the need to burn any fossil fuels in that regard. We have a number of community-centric products that provide innovative fuel efficient cook stoves or clean drinking water solutions into rural communities to save them from having to chop down trees for wood fires for cooking or boiling water. And we have a number of biodiversity projects that are all about ecology and environmental benefits, which is largely what we've focused on with FloraLife. So the projects that have been chosen here, and bearing in mind, of course, sorry, before I go on to the choice of projects that FloraLife are supporting, all of this is not, absolutely not in the interest of just being an easy fix or something that we can therefore just buy our way into carbon neutrality. That isn't what we're advocating here at all. What we are saying is that these projects are benefiting climate change now, today. And as we've already touched on, that 1.5 degrees, that temperature rise point of no return, could potentially be only as few as 6 years away. So whilst we are absolutely prioritizing the work of reducing emissions at source and transitioning to more efficient fuels or renewable energies or electric vehicles or whatever that looks like in your business, that should absolutely be the priority. But whilst we're getting on with doing all of that really good work, carbon offsetting, every ton of carbon that we offset now today adds minutes onto that ticking clock. So we are buying ourselves the time that we need to get on and do the reduction of emissions at source. They work very much hand in hand, very much in parallel. Now, FloraLife have chosen to support a fantastic, favourite scheme of mine, actually. I have to say, it's firstly a scheme based in Brazil, which is helping to protect the Amazon rainforest against illegal deforestation. Now, the Amazon rainforest, very, very precious part of the earth, lungs of the earth, as they call it, very, very important. Huge amounts of natural habitat, of course, there, and lots of benefits to be gleaned from the Amazon, both in terms of environmental and even medical advances. But the Amazon is shrinking. It's shrinking because there are a number of people or groups in those parts of the world who will undertake illegal logging activities, essentially stealing the trees, felling the trees to go ahead and sell as timber. That's what we're trying to protect the forest against, and we're doing this with this project, which is set up to help the communities in those areas by providing them with alternatives, alternative education, alternative employment, a better understanding of why it is very important that they do not accept the bribes from these organizations and so on to come in and take the trees. And these projects have significantly reduced the deforestation rate there in the Amazon rainforest, which is all measurable and evidenced through satellite photography and the images that they take to track the success of the projects. Now, this is a really, really important piece of work because tree planting, we'll talk about tree planting in a second because that's the other part of what we've chosen to support here. But tree planting is a wonderful activity. It's fantastic. Creating more woodland, creating more forests is very important, and it's a great investment in our future. But if you plant a tree today, plant one tree today, that tree will take roughly 40 years to sequester 1 ton of carbon because it takes some time to fully mature and develop. What this project here in Brazil is saying is, here today stands acres and acres and acres of fully mature rainforest. that would not be here today if it weren't for this fantastic piece of work. And when you consider that 1 acre of fully mature rainforest will sequester 2.5 tons of carbon every year, it's clearly a very, very wise investment to be supporting work like that when we're trying to address the climate change issues. Having said that, the other side of the project that FloraLife are supporting is all about tree planting. We're also pledged that for all of the carbon that we've offset there through the scheme in Brazil, for every ton of carbon that's been offset to make Express 200 a carbon neutral product, we have also gone ahead and planted a tree in Kenya, the Great Valley Rift in Kenya. We've got a massive tree planting campaign running there. Creating reforestation and returning a lot of natural habitat to a part of the world that was previously stripped bare. And there's lots and lots of good work going on there. We've got a team of people in Kenya who are very dedicated and very, very pleased to have received this contribution to their cause and planted more trees there, more wildlife returning to their natural habitats, and of course, more of an investment in the future for carbon reduction and sequestering in that part of the world as well. Shall we step on to the next slide then, Mark? Just to touch on the accreditation piece, this is a very quick punctuation on everything that I just said, but I know that some people have differing views or very emotive views about carbon offsetting, of course, and we like to assure them that not only are we ourselves as an organization audited annually by the QAS, so that you know that all of the work that's getting done in this area is getting very thoroughly checked indeed, but all of the projects that we support are themselves audited by either the gold standard for carbon offsetting or the VCS, the verified carbon standard by Verra. The Brazil project, I think, is a VCS project that we've been supporting here, and you can see that the audit process that they undertake is absolutely rigorous. If you did want to look them up, do your homework on the VCS. They absolutely demonstrate at every turn that every ton of carbon that is saved through these projects not only meets the requirement of additionality and is certainly a verified ton of carbon saving, but also is aligned very much to the UN sustainability goals, and provides other community benefits, socioeconomic benefits to the regions and the parts of the world that the projects are set up in. Next slide then, Mark. Last but not least, we've got the carbon footprint standard, of course. So, what have we got here? A question: is it just one product by FloraLife that has been deemed carbon neutral?
I can get into that towards the end, Dan. That's not a problem.
Mark's going to take that one later. Okay, good stuff.
Yeah.
So you'll see on the Express 200 range, the carbon footprint standard, carbon neutral product badge. Choosing products like this is one of the things that you can do to help address climate change. You know, the more carbon neutral products that you choose to purchase, again, as individuals or as businesses, the more you are supporting the fight against climate change and that race to beat the 1.5 degrees. And that's not the only thing you can do, of course. I mean, everything that we've talked about today in terms of reducing consumption of energy, or potentially even switching your energy supplier. If your electricity supplier, for example, has the option to have a 100% renewable tariff, a green tariff, as it were, switch to that tariff, because you know that that's then zero emissions being caused by your electricity consumption, which could be your business operations or at home. Zero emissions being caused by your electricity consumption is a really great place to start. Of course, the world is transitioning as well to things like electric vehicles, and more we're going to see that taking prevalence. So more and more as well, the buying options for electric vehicles, there are lots of new schemes, salary sacrifice schemes and government schemes coming out to help people buy electric vehicles as they come to market, and as we move towards the 2025 target of no more new petrol or diesel cars being sold in the UK, certainly, and I'm sure that other parts of the world will follow suit as well very soon. And then just from a functional point of view, there are probably items in your homes or in your businesses, lighting that can be changed to LED lighting, energy efficiencies. If that hasn't already been undertaken, there can be, there's technologies to invest in for refrigeration or cooling, like EndoCube technologies or similar, that can significantly reduce energy consumption again, to help fight and combat climate change. Lots and lots of things to look into. But in your choices, we would like to think that if you look for a mark like ours, like the Carbon Footprint Standard, a carbon neutral product, something that has been independently certified as a carbon neutral product or service, then that really helps, because the more people support these, the more of them there will be. It's a standard market argument that you'll get that exponential increase, and every other organization in the world will start to address their carbon footprint as well. Last slide, please, Mark. There we go. I think that sums things up from me. We've got touchdown on carbon offsetting there. So what is climate change? Why is it important that we address it? How can carbon offsetting help us to address that now, today? And how we've done all of that together with FloraLife in line with the Express 200 range, and how we look forward to doing more of it. I'll look forward to more of those questions. Mark.
Dan, thank you very much for that. That was awesome. So I think that was a good time to open the floor to any questions we've got. Georgina, is there any questions you want to start reading out?
Yes. So one of the questions we received was about the FloraLife product, and is there just the one product by FloraLife that has been deemed carbon neutral?
Sure, I can take that. My dog's going to start barking. I can sense it. Sorry about that. Yeah, no, this was the start of our journey when looking at our full product range. But I think it'll be fair to say that it's definitely not the end. We're learning as we go, and we have a lot of goals that we would like to achieve over the next 4 years. And doing deeper dives on the rest of our product range is certainly something that we're looking at. So I think that's probably the most we can share at the moment. But certainly it's top of our list to really look at our overall business, our operations, our products, and continue, and after 2025, we look forward to setting our 2030 plan and our climate action goals towards 2030, 2035, and continue down that road. We certainly want to improve as much as we can across our full range.
Another question is, where is this product available? Is it only available in the US?
No, this product is available globally. Any Express Ultra 200 that's manufactured in Europe or the US is marketed and sold as a carbon neutral product. To make that specific, it is the Express Ultra 200. It is not the regular Express 200. The difference being the regular, a 10 ml per liter formula, and the Ultra being a 5 ml per liter formula. Both provide the same great quality use solution for your flowers, but you will actually end up getting a better financial deal on the Ultra. So yes, available globally. We sell that in many different markets through wholesale, to supermarkets, bouquet operations, florists. It's open there for everyone around the world.
Good to know. Thank you. Another question: does the claiming of carbon credits entail the creation and implementation of legislation that benefits the end users during the transition to carbon neutrality? That was a mouthful.
It was a mouthful. I'm sorry. Could you repeat the question?
So does the claiming of carbon credits entail the creation and implementation of legislation that benefits the end users during the transition to carbon neutrality?
I think the answer to the question is no. That's the very simple, quick answer. Let me offer a bit of dialogue to support that and see if does the claiming of carbon credits entail the creation of legislation? So no, it doesn't create any legislation as such, because carbon offsetting right now is still a voluntary market. We're talking about voluntary carbon offsetting. There are some parts of the world, in particular in the EU, where there's an entirely different market for carbon tax. And there are a lot of companies that are taxed on achieving certain carbon thresholds. So carbon has to be reported on annually. You're given a threshold target. If you exceed this target, you need to purchase the ECUs, European Carbon Units, I think, to make up the difference. That's very much a tax and business piece, and there's a lot of legislation surrounding that. You can purchase ECUs. If you come in below your threshold, you've then got credits, and you can trade these. You can sell your ECUs to other businesses, and it becomes a bit of a to and fro. But the voluntary market, the market that we're discussing here today, is all about actually not just meeting legislation, but how do I take my business, myself, my organization on a journey to carbon neutral? How do I become net zero? How do we really address climate change? Still very much a voluntary market. The projects are all, as I say, driven by the need to address climate change primarily, but they all also very much support the UN sustainability goals and have a number of community-centric benefits that surround and are adjacent to that primary goal of reducing carbon, typically socioeconomic benefits. So, for example, if you were to support a project that had was providing fuel-efficient cooking solutions into rural communities in Uganda, then typically the carbon benefit there is coming because we're burning less wood, chopping down fewer trees, etc. But what we're also doing is gifting the women in these communities time, which is subsequently reinvested in education and employment, and there are lots of other benefits that surround that sort of work. And the same is true of all of the projects that we support. Has that sort of answered the question?
I think so. It answered how I interpreted the question, so thank you for that. If the person doesn't feel the question was answered, please reach out to me in the chat and clarify what you would like to hear from us. I have one more question. So for people who don't know, we have Express 200 and we have Express Ultra 200. And Mark, I think this one's for you. Someone's asking, why don't we just phase out the Express 200 and only offer the Express Ultra 200?
Great question. You know, long term, absolutely. I think that would be a great goal. But you know, there's people who've used, or businesses that have used the 10 mil per formula for a very long time, and it's important that they, you know, maybe want to test the new one and then slowly transition over. So, should it be a goal? Absolutely. I think it would be a great movement because it does significantly reduce on packaging and freight. What is the point in having a less concentrated version if the other one does do just as well? But again, think about that a bit more. If you have a more concentrated product on the shelf, if it's in the same container size, it will end up having a higher shelf price, a higher sticker price, and sometimes that can cause a bit of a shock to the market too if it's ultimately changed too quickly. So I believe it will be a transition period. I would like to think we could transition the full market globally to Ultra, but I think there's a lot of questions there to be answered alongside with our customers. Yeah.
Thank you. This one is for Dan. So there are some concerns that emission reductions as a result of carbon offset schemes are overestimated and that the end result is not necessarily carbon neutral. So I think this is about the people say that carbon offsetting is a type of greenwashing. And so what is your opinion? What is your point of view on that?
I'd say two things on this. So firstly, the carbon offsetting projects that we support specifically, as I touched on, are all audited and accredited by one of two bodies, the VCS or the gold standard, who are arguably the two most reputed and credible auditing bodies in this space around the world. There are, of course, many other would-be carbon offsetting projects. There is, very sad to say, there is a space here for people to set up projects and try selling carbon credits, carbon offsets, the carbon benefit of their actions to organizations in a similar way, which is not necessarily accurate, nor measured, nor particularly well controlled. So firstly, if you are going to explore this space, it is very important to consider the quality of the carbon credits that you're purchasing, that they are certified or accredited by somebody like the VCS, for example, like the Amazon project that we support. In terms of any overestimation, I've seen the audit criteria, and I think that this is unlikely. I think more often than not, actually projects and the people who work the projects are quietly disappointed by how few credits they actually get issued by the auditing bodies, because they believe they may have reduced or removed more carbon than the auditing body says they have. So I think that the overestimation piece is not really a concern. Having said that, whenever we undertake the measurement of carbon emissions, of course, even in the calculation of that measurement, there is a margin of error. So we would always advocate that in order to be certified as carbon neutral and be able to credibly declare that you're carbon neutral, you should offset to the margin of error, i.e. offset at least the maximum amount based on what could have possibly gone wrong even in the initial calculations in the first place. Now, greenwashing is a term that we hear, of course, every day here, and I think it is really important to be very clear that nobody wants to be getting involved with greenwashing. Nobody wants to be considering an accreditation that can just be bought. If a business today says, okay, I want to be carbon neutral tomorrow, how many carbon credits do I have to buy? Let me throw some money at it, and I'm carbon neutral, and I don't have to worry about this again until next year. Then those are not the sort of businesses that we really want to be working with. And certainly the idea of carbon offsetting as greenwashing in that regard is not something that we would advocate or support at all. What I would say is that people ask me every day, what should I do? What should I do, Dan, to address climate change? We've got this we're in the business of X and we're doing Y, and should I go and replace all of my lights with LEDs? Should I replace my fleet with electric cars? Should I switch my energy supplier to a renewable tariff? Should I offset my carbon emissions using your offsetting projects that you've described? What should I do? And the answer to that question is all of the above. We're not talking about greenwashing here. We're talking about doing absolutely everything that we can, because 1.5 degrees and the point of no return, once again, worst case scenario, is only 6 years away. Every ton of carbon that we offset today adds minutes onto that clock, buys us the time to do all the really important good work of reducing those emissions at source in the first place. And what we hope for everybody, and what we hope for the guys here at FloraLife, and what we hope for all of our customers, is that next year there's much less to offset, and the year after even less again, because those emissions are getting reduced as they should be, because we're talking about plans and strategy to reduce those emissions at source to fight climate change. But carbon offsetting absolutely has its place in that fight to help us make a difference now, today.
Thank you for that. That was very clear and very interesting. I've gone through all the questions, so that's it from us. Dan, Mark, thank you both for your time and for all the interesting facts and information you shared with us. I'm going to post my email address in the chat. If anyone has any other questions about the FloraLife products, about Carbon Footprint Ltd, or about Carbon Footprint itself, reach out to me and I'll forward the questions to the correct people and get you the answers that you need. Thank you both, and thank you to our attendees for joining us, and we can't wait to have you on our next monthly webinar.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Georgina. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.